Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, troubleshooters. It's time to sit back and relax, all right? Let all your problems wash away. Put your mind at rest because we've got 45 minutes of solutions coming your way right now. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in today's episode, we're all about living in life in the fast lane, and that means that life is all about the destination and not the journey. So we're going to check out California's answer to bullet trains. We've got something special for the FIFA World Cup fans who love to yell at the TV set. We'll look at the latest referee technology that might, settle the arguments. And we'll check out a creative solution to the current fuel crisis, and it's great news for people who love their fish and chips. All that in good time, though. Before we get into that, we'd better include the bloke that'll take us beyond the headlines. Welcome to the microphone, the husky Matthew Dickerson.
Well, I will make a quick apology to begin with. I've been at a 2-day university reunion, so not just a one day, not just a one night.
A bender.
Well, no, this is not the result. Let me just say, for the record, not the result.
You're too old for that rubbish.
Well, too old for that alcohol consumption at that level. This is just the result of talking solid for 2 days. So my apologies to listeners. This is the husky version of my voice, and we'll continue on. And that's how dedicated we are, James.
You're almost all talked out, but that's only almost.
We've still got 45 minutes left in
Gotcha.
there. One thing I did do before the reunion, when I could still talk a little bit better, was I did one of my radio shows. And I was talking on that about batteries of various levels, grid scale batteries, how they're helping the electricity market, the pricing at the moment. In New South Wales, for example, the official price of electricity, the wholesale price, will go down from the regulator by 7.7%. And they're putting a lot of that down to grid scale batteries. People are putting batteries on their homes in unheard of numbers. And they're quite incredible when you start to consider the numbers we've got at the moment with batteries and the amount of storage we've got, and even with solar, because obviously batteries and solar tend to go well together, because solar, we're pretty confident we're going to get some electricity each day because the sun tends to come up every day. Yes, there are clouds, but it's still the modern solar panel. I've been quite amazed with just how efficient the modern solar panel is, even when there's clouds around. Obviously, it loses some, but they're still pretty good. But we're also pretty confident it's going to be dark each night. So we know we're going to have some time when we're not generating electricity.
You've done your research.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's all facts here, folks, all facts. So what do we do in that time while having some sort of storage is important. And there are some solar farms that are being built now where they're basically building them as an integrated outcome or an integrated project where they'll have the solar panels and the battery all as one project. So effectively, that solar farm is outputting electricity all the time. It's generating more than is needed during the middle of the day. The excess is going to the battery. Come night time, it's coming out of the battery. So that makes sense. But if just a couple of quick figures on this, rooftop solar across this nation, we are now producing 28 gigawatts. So we have the potential to produce 28 gigawatts out of our rooftop solar. To give you a comparison, grid scale solar is 20 gigawatts. So we're producing more, or we've got the potential. Again, if it was sunny everywhere across Australia, we've got the potential to produce 28 gigawatts out of our solar panels on our rooftops. So that's fantastic. Yeah, wow. And again, just to put that in perspective, coal, 22 gigawatts at the moment, wind, 13 gigawatts. So there's a great argument there for that rooftop solar. Batteries, there's about 600,000 batteries that have already been installed on homes compared to, say, 4 million homes with solar. But the grid still wins the argument on batteries because they tend to put big batteries in. 25 gigawatt hours of storage we've got in our grid scale batteries, but we've got 10 gigawatt hours on our houses across the nation. So that's pretty impressive from a storage perspective. Now, the question that came in the radio program during the week with one of the callers was someone said, well, I live in an apartment block, so I kind of don't get to participate in this whole revolution. Yeah. There's no ability for me to put on rooftop solar, and even if there was, if I happen to live on the rooftop of this particular apartment block, well, the surface area would probably help out my apartment, but no one else below me is going to get rooftop solar. But there's an interesting solution that we came about as we kept going through this radio program and different callers rang in. We know you can put a battery on without having solar. You can go and put a battery on to store some energy during the day in your house, your apartment, and then use it at night. And obviously time of use metering means that you've got different prices for electricity during the day. Yeah. And you say, well, why would I do that? Because I don't have solar. But some electricity companies, some retailers are providing electricity at different rates during the day, including zero. So between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m, and I've even seen one from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m, the price you'll pay for electricity is not cheap, it's zero. So
you can fill your bucket
yeah,
to the brim,
exactly
and
right.
then use it later on that night.
Now, I actually thought this doesn't seem like I'm doing the right thing. If I'm in an apartment and I put a battery on just to take electricity that I'm not producing and store it and then use it later, I'm thinking, well, isn't that not really the right thing? But the further I discussed it with different electricity providers, retailers, the further I found out that they've got excess electricity. They would prefer it to be taken off the grid to be used rather than just sitting there and not used at all. So from their perspective, they're quite happy with that. Now, you're paying the most for electricity usually between about 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. So if you take some electricity at that zero cost and store it in a battery of some size and then use it later on in the day when the electricity is the dearest, then that's good for you. That's good for your electricity bill. There's other companies that are charging the old off-peak is kind of gone now, controlled load, where you had to wire your house with your normal peak load and your off-peak load. So that was common going back 10 to 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That's kind of gone or going now, but time of use means that between, say, midnight and 6 a.m, all of your loads in your house can be on a plan that might be, say, 4, 5, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So the other thing you could do is charge it up overnight. So use your electricity overnight, charge your battery overnight, and then not so much use it during the day because electricity might be a bit cheaper, but then the next night in that peak time, use it then. Now, I imagine in an apartment, you've got strata. Strata can be fun in times, but you have to get permissions to put the battery in. Where would you store it? Could you store it inside? Could you store it on a balcony? All those questions. I don't know the answers to all of that, but the concept about putting a battery in for an apartment, not with solar panels, I thought that's a really interesting way to still participate in this revolution, even though you can't have your solar panels on.
That's just a very clever way of using electricity.
It is, I thought.
And we're just getting cleverer and cleverer about what we do.
That's right. And we say it so many times, we're at the beginning of some of these processes.
Yeah.
And as we go forward, we'll come up with different ways, better ways, interesting ways to take advantage of everything that's happening. And so there's one way to go and explore that. If you're in an apartment, try and explore that way to take advantage of it.
An amazing story. Well, we got some more amazing stories for you coming up right now, starting with this one. Now, the news for EV manufacturers gets better and better every week. While sales continue to improve, there's no indication that that pattern is likely to change in the foreseeable future. Surely anyone looking to purchase an ICE tomorrow has got to be thinking about the resale 5 to 10 years on. I mean, prices are going to plummet, wouldn't you think, Matt?
I think that and a lot more. So there's a few things that are interesting. You and I can talk about it. We can predict the future. We're cool with that. That's no problem for us.
No one's going to check us later on.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Give us a call in 10 years' time to see how we went. But we do focus a lot on different things happening in the future, and we may be a little bit future focused and may be at the bleeding edge in some areas. But I love it when you get a survey that tells us what we kind of think is happening, but it actually matches. That's pretty exciting for me. So there's been a major survey that's just been done about cars, car sales, where are you going with cars, what's happening in the future. And the thing that I got most excited about was we've tipped over the magic halfway point. We're at 54% from this latest survey of the proportion of Aussies considering an EV for their next car.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that sales are going to go to 54% this month necessarily, but it means when someone's considering their next purchase, 54%, they might consider it and they might find, oh, I need a vehicle that does A, B and C. I'll consider an EV. Oh, it doesn't quite work for me.
Yeah.
I'll still go for petrol. And that's okay. I've said it before. If my job was travelling 1,000 kilometres every day for work, I wouldn't have an EV. I couldn't see that an EV would work for me. Yeah. But if you consider it, you might say, well, actually an EV would work for me. So that was exciting, the 54%. The other one,
there's going to be some of that 54% that are going to tipple the other way, or and pick up their EV. But there are other people who are just, I'm going to get an EV, and they're just forgetting about ICE. So we're considering a lot in this number. It's just a growth in
That's right.
In the number of people who are going to be buying EVs. That's
right. And the other one, you love seeing a survey where you go, well, did they really need to survey people for that? So 37% of people said recent petrol price increases have directly pushed them towards considering an EV. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. I'm surprised it's just the recent ones. I mean, the petrol prices have been up. I remember, look, when they were less than $1. That's how old I am. Once they bumped up over like $1.50, like you just.
Well, I think actually it's a bit like the frog in the cold water that you slowly turn the temperature up. It's the same with petrol prices. When it's 99 cents and it's $1 and it's $1.01, it's $1.02, you probably become conditioned to it a little bit. But when end of February hit and then it jumped, and I think at some stage there it was up 40% over, say, a 3-week period, I think that's when people go, oh my gosh, look at the petrol price now. If it had have gone up slowly, we probably wouldn't have noticed so much. But it really noticed. So that recent petrol price increase was what 37% of people said drove them to say, I'm considering an EV.
And if you're filling up your car more than once a week, or even once a week, you know, that just amounts, doesn't it?
It does. And I mean, I mentioned the reunion I've been at. Some people had to travel to that. And one of the common conversations in the beginning, until they realised they were getting no sympathy from me whatsoever, was about petrol prices. Well, there's an easy way to fix that. So the other one that is interesting is that we used to talk about range anxiety as being a real barrier for people. People would talk about range anxiety. I can't get that distance. I don't know how far I'm getting. All these issues we hear throwing up.
Yep.
That's not the number one reason anymore for people to be not so much keen on the EV idea. The number one reason, 44% of people cited this as their reason, was the public charging infrastructure, the public charging stations where I can charge up, which is still linked to range anxiety, but just the fact that, well, I reckon I can get from A to B and I reckon I'm okay with the range now, but when I get there, is there going to be enough charging spots for me? Is there going to be the fast enough charging, just the whole public charging infrastructure? And to give you an idea of how far behind we are, here in Australia we have 45 EVs per public charger. Now, you're not going to see all those at a public charger at the same time because that would be a long lineup. Yeah. But there are times on a busy long weekend, for example, that you might see a bit of a lineup. So 45 EVs per public charger. In South Korea, who lead the world in this, 1.8 EVs per charger. So that's a little bit more impressive. So, and look, there's different ways. We're exploring curbside charging and utility pole charging. And so there are different ways. We've all seen pictures on social media where someone's parked their EV out the front of their apartment and they've got the extension cord running across the footpath and plugged in the car. So I think we've got to get away from that a little bit. The other one, which I absolutely believe, again, it's one of those obvious ones, when they surveyed people that have an EV currently, 90% said that's it. Their next vehicle is going to be electric. There's no consideration. Yeah. And I'm actually interested in the 10%. I'm not sure why they aren't just saying it's a done deal. But there might be other reasons. There might be different uses they have for those vehicles. But what I hear from people anecdotally, which is not data, it's just anecdotes, is that once people get it, it's like, oh my gosh, why did it take so long? This is like all the positives people hear. I'm yet to meet a person that went, I bought an EV, it was rubbish, I took it back and went back to a petrol car. So once people get them, I think they do. The other interesting thing was that people were concerned about depreciation. And they said EVs, the people that were talking or in this survey, people believe that EVs would lose about 30% of their value within 3 years of purchase. And I went and did some further research because I thought 30% over 3 years for any new car is probably about right. Yeah. And the research that I did said that if you buy a fairly low-priced common car, then you might be expected to lose 25 to 30% over the first 3 years. This is in an ICE. If you bought, say, a mid-range normal car, 30 to 45%. And if you're buying a luxury car, and I won't mention brand names, but you know that the common brand names we would see in ICE luxury cars, expect to lose 40 to 60% of the initial purchase price after 3 years. And that probably makes more sense to me. So if I lost 30% on my EV over 3 years, and I don't have to sell it in 3 years, because that's the other thing, is that people aren't selling them as regularly because it's not wearing out. There's nothing to go, well, I really better get rid of this because it's so old now and the warranty's about to expire and I'm having it serviced all the time and the engine's just about gone. We just don't see that with EVs. So it's certainly a changing landscape. So I absolutely believe within the next decade, EVs are just going to be the mainstream family transport. It's not going to be ICE or EV, which is 54% now. It's going to be EV1 or EV2. Which EV do I buy in my EV purchases? So it's certainly a changing landscape. So I'm pretty excited about a whole range of that. Some of it's not surprising, but it's certainly exciting.
Superfast rail and bullet trains, they're a technology that have been embraced by Japan and China, shedding hours and hours of time from a commuter's troubles. It's faster to board with fewer hassles than short-range flight. It's cheaper, and in many cases, workers can live 200 or 300 kilometres from their home with a similar commute time to their more local colleagues. That's all well and good when everything's set up, but high-speed rail requires, as we know, extensive specialised infrastructure. So in California, engineers are toying with the idea of super high-speed bus transit. Yes, you heard that right, folks, to leave the other travel modes in the dust, Matt.
So I'm in two minds about rail tracks that we use for railways, railway lines, railway cars, and I don't get trams. We've recently, I say recently, probably,
I love trams.
Do you? Oh, well, you're not going to like this then.
We're not going to see eye to eye on this, Matt.
So I think of Sydney, which I think was trying to catch up to Melbourne. Melbourne's got a great tram system it's had for a long time. Sydney didn't have a tram system, so they looked over their shoulder and went, I like that. And sometimes people see other things and think, I want that as well. It took 5 years, $3.1 billion for Sydney to build 12 kilometres of tram tracks. So that opened in 2020. And I look at it and I go, well, you've got parts of the main street of Sydney, George Street, closed off now to vehicular traffic. And I get on a tram here and it doesn't seem to go that fast. Sometimes I can go for a walk and kind of outpace the tram.
Matthew. Look, having lived in Sydney in the 90s and having to catch a bus and you'd be waiting there at the bus time, the peak hour, and then the bus would arrive, but it'd be full. And then if you got on a bus, you'd be in that bottleneck going up, trying to find Central Station, and then on from there, it just seemed to take forever. Now you get on a tram and you're just there.
Yeah, well, it's
whatever time of day.
So go one step to the side for a moment. High-speed rail I love. So I've been on a train in Shanghai. You go from the airport into Shanghai.
It sounds very appealing.
It's about 400 kilometres an hour. Although I think they've cut it down recently. When I went on, it was definitely 400 kilometres an hour. It took about 7 minutes to get the 30 kilometres from the airport into the city. Yeah. And for places like Melbourne in particular, getting from the airport into the city is a long time in a taxi. So high-speed rail I get. My big issue with trams in Sydney, for example, with the 12 kilometres, did I mention that, 12 kilometres of track, is that you've only got the ability to go on that 12 kilometres of track. And when you spent $3.1 billion, I go, couldn't you buy a few electric buses, maybe have a dedicated bus lane for peak hours, and then say, we've got buses and you know what? We've got roads. They can go on any of those roads, anywhere at all. So that's my issue with trams. I just go, they're so limited in a situation around the CBD, and buses could do the same thing. And I take your point that sometimes buses weren't that pleasant. I remember catching buses in Sydney and they were crowded, they weren't on time, they weren't that pleasant. But they're problems you can fix. Surely you can have more buses. You can make them new with $3.1 billion. That's a lot of buses you can buy.
I just remember that they could have, but they didn't.
They didn't.
And even getting out of the SCG, it used to take forever if you needed a bus. Trams now, they just load them on, get them out of there and they're gone. It's just... anyway.
So in California, they've been looking at some high-speed rail. They've got some work being done. There's a project that's underway, so things are happening with high-speed rail, but it's still a long way off. They've had delays. They've got excessive costs with some of that. So some bright spark has come up with the idea of a bullet bus. So as much as I am not a fan of trams, I think electric buses around Sydney would be great. This one is intriguing as well.
Yeah.
So their plan is, and I've seen, they've actually got a prototype built of a bullet bus. So it looks like at the front a sports car and then extended by 30 seats.
That's a stretch limo.
It's a stretch Ferrari. Like it's a stretch limo. So the idea is obviously it's going to go fast. So it's going to cut through the air nice and low at the front, and then everyone's sitting in their seats with a 4-point harness seatbelt, mind you.
Wow.
So when I jump in a bus and I clip on my 4-point harness seatbelt, I think, wow, what's going to happen here? So they will do speeds up to 225 kilometres per hour. Now, I did a bit of research on the Autobahn, so people go very fast on the Autobahn in Germany, but buses still are limited to 100 k's an hour on the Autobahn, which
Yeah.
kind of makes me feel a bit more comfortable as well. So if someone's driving their Ferrari, their Lamborghini, their Tesla at 200, 300 kilometres an hour, whatever, good luck to them. But on my public bus, I probably want to go at 100 k's an hour.
Yeah.
This particular bus, and I call it a bullet bus, but it's a bus is not doing it justice, if you like. But they're made to go at these speeds. So they've got tyres that can handle those speeds. They've got brakes that can handle those speeds, a suspension. Everything's built around that speed. And then the idea is they'll have a dedicated lane on the freeways. You get on the bus. Rather than wait for this project for high-speed rail to be built, you'll get on the bus at whatever destination or whatever location you start at, and off you go to the destination on the freeway in your dedicated lane at 225 kilometres an hour. And then when you get to the other end, it can still just drive through the streets like a normal bus. So it's not limited to those tracks. So that's attractive. I was a bit concerned about Joe Blow taking his time, meandering along in one of the busy lanes of traffic on this freeway and looks over to his left or right and goes, oh, there's a free lane. I'll just duck over to that lane because it's a bit freer than this one. And then from behind comes a 225.
Scoop with his pointy nose.
Yeah, that's right. Scoops him up in the air and flips him over.
You up in the air. Yeah, right.
So to make you more nervous, these buses are autonomous. And the reason for that is they said at 225 kilometres an hour, humans simply don't have the reaction time on a road to be able to handle Joe Blow, who meanders over into the lane. So autonomously, this bus should be able to detect that car that shouldn't be where it is and slow down appropriately and basically be safe for everyone. At this stage, it's all only being proposed. They've done costings on it. They've shown the prototype of it. So it's not just a thought bubble. It's gone a little bit further than that. But I think the regulators, that'll be the real sticking point for them to be confident, because the first crash, if it ever happened,
It's going to
involving
be spectacular.
this bus and the 38 cars that it collects on the freeway, that's going to be the time the regulators went, did we check that out enough? So it's going to be a brave government person who says, I'll sign off on that, and off you go starting it. But what I didn't think of in all of this was this process. I mean, I like high-speed rail. I like buses around cities. At no stage did I ever go, you know what, why don't they put those two together? But someone has gone, let's put those two together. So I'm watching with keen interest to see whether or not it actually comes to fruition. It may not, but it may.
Well, you also, if you're going to be driving that fast, you need some good roads. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want one littered with potholes or just a few lumps in the road there.
Yeah, or one that warps with heat and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, that's right. So there's some challenges there, but I also like the idea that maybe we don't need the high-speed rail, which I still am a fan of. But I think on highly trafficked routes, high-speed rail would still make sense. But this would make sense on areas that maybe aren't quite as highly trafficked, but still trafficked enough to have a good quality road.
Well, we certainly live in an era of the fantastical, where leisure and entertainment in the home often isn't much less than what you may expect in a commercial setting. It's not completely uncommon for a home to have a cinema room these days. Many backyards have a pool these days, where the one house on the street with that luxury in the 80s quickly became the party house in the neighbourhood. A backyard today may have a children's play equipment that would only have been seen in a shopping centre or local playground 30 years ago. When a video hit the internet advising a lazy river water ride from Costco, quite a few people registered their interest. Lazy river rides are enormous and require quite the setup. But this was Costco, of course. Matt, I couldn't help but notice that you're yet to install a lazy river ride in your yard.
I know you stopped in my front yard on the way in today and went, can I go for where is it? Where is it? You haven't set it up.
Enough space for a lazy river ride?
There would be if we could get one. And this is the problem we're having at the moment. So it's quite relaxing sitting on a tube, floating down the river. It's just a lovely way to spend an afternoon. And so people saw this and went, well, I haven't got time to get down the river, but this was a 61-metre inflatable lazy river. And they showed a video of it being constructed, a time-lapse video. It's pretty quick to put up. You basically hooked up some pumps and pumped it up and away you went.
But these occur in theme parks as well, like in the Wet and Wild and whatnot,
Exactly what it was. It was one of those in a backyard version.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it had water that was moving around in a motion. So you could literally sit on this and just meander your way around. They're fantastic.
With the current,
Yeah, that's right. With the current that your river was producing by itself in some way, shape or form. Some perpetual motion because you couldn't see anything plugged into it there. But forget that for the moment. It looked fantastic. So as you said, people looked at it. 15 million people looked at it. And some of those went, I'm going to get me one of those. And of course, Costco said, what are you talking about? This was an AI video that someone thought would be funny to create and put out there, and I'm not sure why they picked on Costco, because Costco...
Well, Costco sells everything.
They do, you're probably right, so why not?
You need a drum kit or a coffin or some breakfast cereal.
And they do sell large products sometimes, so they've got everything there. So people went, I'll have one of those. They didn't have them. And then when you look at the video a little bit closer, look, AI video is getting good. It just looked a bit funny that this woman sitting on her tube, relaxing through the river as she went around in circles, didn't have a drop of water on her. She was very meticulous about getting on that tube and sitting there without any water. A couple of little things that just seemed like the background wasn't quite right.
Yeah, right.
Finally, you realise that this was just an AI video that someone thought, I'd like to have one of those. Let's create a video, create some interest, maybe some clickbait. Who knows why people do some of these things.
Well, if you're excited about getting yourself your own personal lazy river ride, then you're not worried about the details.
You know, you see it, you go, yeah, look at that. So this is what, there's now a term for it, and this is where I love, we don't have to have something new for long before we've got a new term.
Yeah.
This is called AI slop. So it's not really that creative a term, but AI slop is where we're seeing AI-generated content just to attract some clicks or get some engagement. So if you've got a channel, for example, you put it out there and you get lots of engagement, then you might be able to sell some advertising on your channel because you've got so many people watching your channel or watching your particular site. So they're creating rubbish like this, but the problem is AI-generated information, videos in particular, are getting so good, it's hard to spot them. And that old famous quote about, I believe, half of what you see and none of what you hear, I'm not sure I'd believe half of what I see anymore.
Yeah, that's right. You cannot believe your own eyes. But yeah, it wasn't that long ago that it was easy enough to pick an AI video because there were 6 fingers or 3 arms. Or,
And we did a discussion about it probably 2 years ago now, where there was someone walking through a busy city and you could just see a few little funny bits in her gait and some fingers would kind of appear. And so there were always little glitches there. Oh, that's really...
And people would appear and disappear, in a frame,
We can pick that. That's obviously generated by AI, but now it's not so obvious. And you've really got to be looking at it. And it could just be something that happens that isn't perfect. It could just be poor camera work by someone really shooting something.
Yep.
It could be a whole range of issues. It doesn't mean that every video that's ever shot is perfect. So having something that's not perfect, 6 fingers might be different, but having something that's not perfect is obviously not a true indication that maybe this is an AI video. So we've had other things there where we've had fabricated images of animals. We've had unusual infrastructure projects where people are building something, and all of this is just trying to get people to go, wow, they're building a building that tall. Let me go and have a look at that, or whatever it might be. It's just to try and get our attention. You just go, there's enough interesting things that happen that are real.
Yeah, you can't believe your eyes now. And that means when you do have something that's real but a bit fantastical, people aren't going to believe that either.
No, that's exactly right. It is getting harder and harder to get fact from fiction. And some of those things that you've seen, there might be some famous things in the world that you want to see. And if you watch a video of some of those, you go, well, that's pretty interesting. And seeing it in the flesh sometimes isn't as impressive because that video has been shot at the right time of day and the right angles. But you know it exists when you actually go there and see it rather than some of this. So keep an eye out for that, because as these video tools improve, consumers, people in general are just going to find it harder and harder to spot the real from the not so real.
Yeah. For those of us out there with a bit of land to run livestock, they'll greatly appreciate that there are weeds out there that are an absolute menace, and ragwort is one of those. It's poisonous, and if left unchecked, it'll run through pastures and decimate herds of livestock. Herbicides come with their own problems. Plucking out by hand is labour intensive. So in Cornwall, England, some graziers have pulled out the big guns and are leaning into robotic weed extermination. Mate, you know they filmed Doctor Who not that far away in Cardiff. I'm picturing Daleks rolling across the meadows there. And
Exterminate.
Yep.
That would be an appropriate way to get rid of a weed, wouldn't it? Surely someone should just put that little bit of audio clip on a robot that gets rid of weeds. Ragwort is normally taken out by hand, as you said, and it's pretty labour intensive, and you're relying on the person doing it, who would often be a casual worker, a backpacker, maybe not 100% focused on their job every single time. Yeah. Maybe missing some ragwort here and there.
Well, yeah, and also these things can shoot up in a week or so. Like, you know, you might not be might not be an obvious plant one day and then a couple of days later.
Yeah, that's exactly
it's
right.
hard to just do it all manually.
That's right. Now, we've done some stories before about some autonomous weed killers that go along and spot weeds and then hit them with a bit of chemical right on that particular spot. So you don't have to have a herbicide, a selective herbicide, herbicide.
Herbicide,
So you don't have a selective herbicide. You can actually have something that's just a straight out plant killer because it's going right on the plant and that little part. So you're not getting that spread of the herbicide as well.
Yeah.
But this is even better because this autonomous robot called Raggy, which is a little bit limited because I think it's going to be used for more than just ragwort. I think it's going to be used for any weed, but it's called Raggy. It's kind of a platform with wheels on either side. So think of a Segway platform, a Segway device.
Thinking of a Dalek. That's all I can think of.
Don't think of a
platform
Dalek.
on wheels. Yeah, okay.
It's a wide platform like a Segway with a wheel on each
Gotcha.
side or wheels on each side. So it sits there. And then over the top of that are cameras and some AI, obviously, because if it hasn't got AI now, it doesn't exist. Some AI to detect weeds. And then it actually mechanically extracts the weeds. So no herbicide involved whatsoever. So you've probably been good for the environment, probably been good for your hip pocket as well. And so it almost goes down and just clutches out the weed, like kind of goes down and pierces into the ground and then pulls out, so you're getting as much of the root or the root error as possible, so that obviously you're not leaving something in the ground to keep growing. So they seem like the testing they've been doing over in Dorset so far, with Dorset Council involved, has been pretty successful. But I just think we're not that far away from commercialising some of these devices like this. And we did a story not so long ago where we were talking about some autonomous devices, and one was an autonomous line marking robot. And I know now, as we speak, in our area, there is an autonomous line marking robot that's being used to mark out soccer fields for playing matches on weekends. So sometimes some of the stuff we talk about is 10 years away. Some of the stuff we talk about, it might be 6 to 12 months away. And this is one, if the trials go well, I absolutely guarantee that the company Cornish Robotics are definitely going to say how many of these can we produce, how quickly can we produce them, and where can we ship them to around the world.
Take off.
Yeah, that's right. So I think this will obviously be a bit of a boon for farmers. The more that they can take care of things like weeds for lower cost, I think farmers have shown in the past they will invest in the infrastructure to begin with if it saves them time and money down the track.
Yeah. Now, at the time of recording, the FIFA World Cup had only just kicked off. Of course, as always, we anticipate 5 or 6 weeks of stratospheric highs and Hadean lows, with no shortage of controversy to stir the pot. So, to say that emotions run high in this competition is quite the understatement. Of course, as always, one of the biggest sources of frustration for players and fans alike is in the miscalled offside decisions. And you can guarantee that commentators will dine out on those bad calls for the full 6-week duration. Now, here to explain the rule today is Matthew Dickerson.
Yeah, I've got no hope of explaining the offside rule because it's almost like the LBW rule in cricket. If you want to know if someone's a soccer fan or football fan, if they're really a soccer fan, they wouldn't call it soccer. But if they're a football fan, they can explain the offside rule to you either simply or in a 1-hour version.
Yeah.
And so I won't do that because I'm not that into my soccer.
But you are going to tell us about how they're getting around it.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you how they're using technology in the World Cup, of which maybe they should have used it in a smaller tournament first. They have done in some trial matches, obviously. But you go, I've got this new bit of technology. Let's take it to the biggest event in the world this year and see how that goes.
This is Elon Musk thinking. This is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a technology that's improved on what they've had before. So they've had some technology that will alert the linesman, which I think a linesman is officially called an assistant referee now, but I would still think of them as a linesman because they're on the line, they're running the lines. So a linesman used to get triggered when a player was more than 50 centimetres offside. And there's some technology built up with cameras, high-speed cameras around the ground. But they've improved that technology now when any player is 10 centimetres or more offside, 10 centimetres, mind you, then they'll get, the linesman will get an audio alert, so they can then put their flag up and say offside. Now, we know we've got VAR, so if a goal is scored, then sometimes I'll go back and replay it, and it does hold the game up. You've got this decision, and still spectators will still yell at the TV because that line wasn't quite right. So to try and take out some of that argument, every player, 1,248 players are playing in the World Cup from 48 teams. Every player has had a complete body scan because they have created an avatar of every player. So if they've got and they know the player that's at the front where the offside would be, they don't just go, we estimate the body size of that person. If someone's got a long nose, they know that nose will be taking them offside. So that's how accurate they've done it, which is how they've been able to get it down to 10 centimetres. 10 centimetres, that's not much, is it?
Amazing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's still the VAR in place in case they think, it was a bit tight, that one, and maybe the 10 centimetres was really 9, maybe it was 11, so we'll still run the VAR.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is that it's obviously the VAR is only used when a goal is scored.
Yeah.
So if you've got offside play for a bit and then a game continues on, someone could get injured or the play could extend for minutes afterwards, and all the players or maybe the players don't know, but someone will go, well, that whole passage of play shouldn't have occurred because...
Exactly, yeah. Every passage of play influences the passages of play that follow it.
Correct. And you don't know what would have happened if you take out that 2 minutes of play and something else happened in that time.
Exactly.
So I think that's a good move to try and get it as accurate as possible. And some people bemoan all the video refereeing in all sorts of sports. But if I'm a professional sports person and I'm paid a lot of money, and this is my career, and this is the record that will live on forever.
And there's a lot of money at stake here.
Yeah,
so there is,
right.
the not only behind the teams, but also there's sports betting that occurs, of course. But there's just so much money at stake and so much investment at stake that when these little errors occur, and they end up being bigger errors.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching rugby league as a kid, and Rex Mossop used to be the commentator, and of course there'd be some try that was scored or not scored, the referee would award it or not award it, and you'd watch the replays, which were pretty low quality replays, but you could see a blatant error, but the referee is only human, and so Rex would carry on, and say commentators would carry on for a while, Rex would carry on for a while about that.
And to get over it, and we move on.
That's right. So that's nice.
There was an acceptance.
But now you still think, well, that could have changed the outcome of so much. It could have been a premiership, it could have been the league table, a whole range of different things. So I'm in favour of getting it right because it's pretty important to these people to get it right. And the spectators, when you've got billions literally watching around the world, getting it right seems important. So,
well, I agree with that, and I see that point, I take that point, but I still like the good old days when we just relied on the guy with the whistle, and if he made a mistake, we just knew that the mistakes get made.
Yeah. And I entirely agree with that. At the under 16s local competition level.
Where we haven't got millions of dollars.
Haven't got sheep stations probably literally on the line. So they're also introducing some technology capable of determining whether the ball left the field before a goal was scored. And I thought normally we'd probably pick up on that because it's a bit more obvious, but they've actually got a chip inside the ball. And so that will determine exactly where that ball is in relation to the line, and they can say, yes, that was...
So, if you're crossing in from, say, the wing, and you're right on the goal line there, sometimes that ball curves out
of course.
And then in again.
Good point. Yeah. So that's another part they've got in the technology there. And there's also that chip will help identify the last player to touch it. So if you had a close goal or a whole range of different situations, you might want to know the last player to touch it before it went out, for example. The last player to touch it, it's gone to the sideline, it's my throw in, sir. No, it's my throw in. Referee's got to make a decision, or the linesman makes a decision there. But no, you've got a chip inside there now. We know that player A rather than player B was the last player to touch it. So it's fascinating.
There you go.
And it's fascinating how far we've gone. But even having a chip inside the ball, even that's fascinating. So, anyway, it's progressing. Keep an eye on it. I hope it all works fantastically for FIFA and for soccer fans.
Let's have a good
world.
tournament. Assessing students in a school situation these days is becoming tougher and tougher and tougher. And the further along in the learning journey, the higher the stakes in each assessment task. Because of the ease and accessibility of AI, many teachers have pulled away from hand-in home assignment style tasks, and because of that, more easily policed in-class tests and examinations have increased. But technology being what it is, some sophisticated students have found ways of cheating nonetheless, even under close supervision. It's a headache, Matt.
I can imagine, and I take your point that you've just said there, where some teachers, some schools say, well, assessments are of no value anymore because they just go home and ask AI to do it. They go and watch the soccer, come back, their assignment's finished, and they hand it in. You almost pick up that it's been done by AI because the spelling and grammar would be perfect. So
Yeah,
you'd know that.
and references, we've seen it, but being able to prove that is very, very difficult.
Yeah, because if you've got a really good student, they might do the job just to that level as well. So it's a tough one. So exams, that's fantastic. But there's some data, this is out of the UK, that said there's 1 million students that are sitting their GCSE and their A-level exams, and out of those million, they found in the last year they did that 2,225 cases involved cheating with some smart technology. So that's not a lot out of a percentage-wise, but that's still a big number,
Still
I
a big
thought.
number, yes.
That's right. So they were using mobile phones, they were using smart devices, and they're getting to the point now where the problem is often with the large exams, you walk into an exam room and there's some casual people. They're not teachers. They're just casual people that are employed for the exam period to just keep an eye on the kids. They may not be up to date with all the latest technology. A kid walks in with a pair of glasses on. You're not going to say, take those glasses off, because they're going to say, well, I need them to see the exam. So they leave the glasses on. Unbeknownst to the person administering the exam or watching over them, they may well be smart glasses. So this is one of the ways kids got caught. They're wearing smart glasses, and of course they can see inside the glasses information that you can't see looking from in front of the glasses. They just look like a interesting pair of glasses. Maybe they've got thicker stems, but that's the style they chose. So that's an issue. Obviously, they've gotten to the point now where you sit your phone on the desk. They say, sorry, you can't have your phone on the desk. That's pretty obvious. Smart watches are a bit harder because not everyone sees a smartwatch and not everyone's aware of what you can do with a smartwatch.
Yeah.
But the other one is having an earpiece, a hidden earpiece. And if you walk in and I've got long hair, male or female, long hair over my ears, most people watching over an exam are not going to say, pull the hair back from your ear so I can look inside your ear. You're not thinking about that. You just see people walk in, you're just checking what they're doing, and it'll be very easy for them to just have information come in, or they mumble away a few things. And what are you saying there? Who are you talking to? Well, I'm just mumbling away to myself. But again, it can be transmitting information and then receiving information back. So these are the ones we've seen now. There's phones that have got, I'll go again, there are pens that are like a phone in that they can transmit and receive data, and they've got a camera and a screen in the pen. So you go in, you take a little sneaky photo of the paper or the question you're stuck on, and that transmits out to someone outside who can then go and use AI, look up the answer, whatever, and then send it back. And you've got this tiny screen on there.
I just hope none of my students are listening to this podcast today. I hope they've taken a week off.
That's right. Don't listen to this episode. Warning, no students listen to this. So this is all a problem. And do you get to the stage where you start having a jammer on an exam area so that you jam any external signal? I'm not sure what the solution is. Vigilance is one part of the solution, but
Will jammer jam Bluetooth though?
Well, it won't, but Bluetooth is okay because you've still got to get outside the room. So you're right. Yeah. So if you transmit via Bluetooth to your phone in your bag, for example, that's fine. But your phone's got to be able to get out there. But I don't know that's the solution because you can. Well, a jam is pretty complicated to actually make sure it works because every frequency now we've got 5G, we've got so many frequencies available. So that's a bit of a problem as well. But it is a challenge. I mean, do you get back to the stage where every exam is just an oral exam? Okay, I need you to explain the soccer offside rule to me, and you sit back for 3 minutes while you're listening to what the explanation is. I mean, it almost feels like you're getting to that point, but an earpiece would still help you in that exam. So, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for teachers. It's a challenge for educators in general to make sure that whether it be a degree, whether it be a Year 12 certificate, whatever it might be, is actually a valid piece of paper to say that this person really earned whatever they've just been given. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. Oh, it's just an amazing world we live in. One of the big problems with supersonic travel is, of course, the massive boom noise that is made as you break the sound barrier. Travelling faster than the sound that you make causes problems for the people below you. For that reason, the Concorde was restricted to flights over the Atlantic Ocean only, where they could sonic boom away to the heart's content. But the engineers at NASA haven't let go of the idea of commercial supersonic flight over land. and they may be close to finding Mark 1 without rattling the windows. What kind of sorcery is this, Matt?
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? So it's interesting. I don't think you'd be able to do the Concorde now, even on a New York to London flight.
Yeah.
Because the fish. Did anyone consult the fish?
I did have him on those previously. Yeah, the whales and the fish don't care, but they probably do, you know.
They probably do. And in today's environment, you wouldn't be able to do it because people would say, let's consult the fish, let's put some boats out there and monitor across the ocean to see how it impacts the fishery. Yeah. So ignore that for the moment. What I'm interested in is that there are some natural barriers that we seem to hit in nature. So the speed of light is one that, apart from the big boom, we tend to think that 3 by 10 to the 8 metres per second is about as fast as we can go anywhere in the universe. Yeah. So that's kind of a bit of a barrier for us. Not that we're really sending people along at that speed, but we know in all sorts of areas that's a bit of a barrier. The speed of sound seems to be another bit of a barrier that we've gone past it, but it seems to have some natural little barriers for us. And I think about the Concorde. So 1976 was the first commercial passenger flight for the Concorde. So that wasn't long after the 747, which really changed international air flight. The 747 went into commercial flights in 1970. It flew at about 0.85 Mach, and so it was getting close to the speed of sound. And that was kind of where Boeing said, you know what, that's close enough. We're going pretty fast. We don't need to go any faster. The Concorde came along and said, no, we'll go faster than that. It'll be fine. But of course, as you said, if you want to fly over land, sure, do it, but you're just going below the speed of sound. Yeah. Across the transatlantic flights, the New York to London, the difference it made, a normal flight, and there's different headwinds, etc., but just take some averages here. A normal flight between New York and London was 7.5 hours. In the Concorde, it was typically 3.5 hours. Yeah. So pretty incredible. Yeah. The record flight they did was under 3 hours when they had the winds in the right direction. But typically you could rely on 3.5 hours for New York to London. So what a revolution.
And some people were commuting, maybe not on a regular basis,
maybe not daily.
At least. But yeah. But we're going from New York to London.
Yeah. It wouldn't be that unusual.
And home again for the evening.
So that's in 1976. That's 1970 for the 747, 1976 for the Concorde. We're a long way past that. Yeah. We're about 50 years past that.
Olden days.
But why haven't we not progressed? And I think it's one of those things, we've hit this speed of sound barrier and we've gone, that's a bit tough. We'll just keep sticking below the speed of sound. So we haven't really, airline travel progressed so much in its early days, but now it hasn't really progressed a lot. So now, and obviously the Concorde hasn't flown since 2003, was the last commercial flight for the Concorde. So it's been a long time. I've never flown supersonically. I would like to, but I didn't fly in the Concorde and there's not another option for me at the moment. So NASA's been working on the X-59, and specifically they're trying to get to the point where they've got an aircraft that will fly over land, not just over the ocean, because they want to reduce the sonic boom. And you go, well, as you say, what kind of sorcery? It's a sonic boom. You go fast the speed of sound, you're going to get that. So, sorry, just give up now. They've been working with some pretty clever, I suppose, audio technicians in their process to try and create something that minimises. You'll still get it, but it will be less than before.
Gentler.
And I know they're serious because they have got a good acronym. So it's called NASA's QUEST, QUESST, standing for Quiet Supersonic Technology. So That's good enough for me. So I know these guys are serious about it. They're now at the point where they're doing test flights and they're doing them over land, I assume over land without people on the land. They have planes following this particular plane, maybe not as fast as that, but planes that are there, and ground monitors to see what sort of speed they're getting. So at this what sort of sound they're getting. At this stage, they're going around about Mach 1.4, and they're doing that at higher than normal aircraft flights, not higher than normal commercial. Their aim, where they're expecting to get this to, is Mach 1.6, and that'll be at 60,000 feet. And I thought about that, and I thought, is part of their whole process just go so high that by the time that sonic boom gets to the ground, it's dissipated enough? But it's not. I think that's part of it. Yeah, but I think a large part of it as well is that they are trying to reduce the amount of sound it makes. The main reason I want about 60,000 feet is because your air resistance at 60,000 feet is dramatically reduced.
Well, that makes sense too, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
But, so there's also conservation of energy here. So if you aren't creating a big sonic boom, then surely that restores or retains a lot more energy in the aircraft as well. Pat.
Yeah, you might be spot on. I don't know. I haven't read anything about that. But you still, I think the main thing they're doing is just trying to get those air particles out of the road in general.
Yeah.
So get up to those heights and you've got less of those air particles to burn fuel to fight against. I don't know whether the sonic boom itself creates another barrier in addition to the normal air resistance, but quite possibly it could. It's an interesting concept. The other part that's interesting is that a bit like the Concorde, if you remember, the Concorde dropped its nose so the pilots could see when they were landing and taking off and then pull it up because you don't really need to see the sky ahead, traffic at that sort of speed, and it makes it more aerodynamic. Well, in the X-59, they said, well, the dropping nose just created another potential complication. Let's not have any dropping nose, but let's not have any front windows. So there is no way for the pilot to see out the front of the plane apart from cameras. So no, and that just, imagine that. Oh, camera one's on the blink. Whoops. Can we just drop the nose? Can we just stick our head out the window and have a look what's going on? So
you're in a bullet. Right.
So they use these high-resolution cameras. I assume there's lots of redundancy built into those cameras.
Yeah.
I assume there's different paths for those different cameras. But no, like it would just be a bit freaky, wouldn't it? You're getting on the plane, and sometimes you see through the pilot, the pilot's doors open before the plane takes off, and you can see out the front. Just imagine glancing in to the cockpit, going, but where's the where's the outdoors? Where's the outside? I don't know. I know we've seen some stuff where people have worked on no windows at all on a plane because all those windows you put on a plane create some potential fracture points and potential weaknesses. So building a skin with no windows at all makes sense. And we've talked about that in terms of modern aircraft design. They're not talking about that on this, but maybe by the time they get to their final version, maybe they'll go, people are okay with that. So you're getting into absolutely a bullet then. You're getting into a cylinder full of people and no way to see it. You are. It's a missile. You get in a missile and we'll just hope we can shoot it across to the right spot at the other end.
Goodness me.
I think, this is my estimation, nothing that we've seen officially from NASA. It's 10 years before this is in commercial flight. So just think with the development of aircraft. But I think we'll see, maybe it's not 10 years, maybe it's 5 years, but I think we'll see this in flights, in test flights during Mach 1.6 within the next 3 months. That they're getting very close to that sort of speed. And that starts to get you going across, well, that's almost 2,000 kilometres an hour if you want to go to sort of normal speeds. But that's getting you, again, some of that New York to London flight definitely under 3 hours. So, but more importantly, it gets you New York to LA, it gets you Sydney to Perth, because you can now do it over land if this all works and if the regulators are okay with it all.
Some exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz still closed, the world's thirst for diesel and jet fuel has not yet abated. As reserves deplete further and further, the pressure is on the think tanks to get workable solutions and keep the planes in the air. As it turns out, there's been an alternative waiting in the wings for some time now. It's sustainable aviation fuel. It's born from used chip fryer oil, and it may even reduce overall CO2 emissions. Matt, is this chip oil the tonic to cure the fuel crisis?
Get out there and buy your fish and chips, folks, if you want to fly, because that is part of the problem. Not enough fish and chips are being eaten. But sustainable aviation fuel is, as you said, comes from things like cooking oil, waste fats, agricultural residues, leftover frying grease, a whole range of things that they can turn into sustainable aviation fuel. But it's expensive. When it's 2 to maybe 3 times more expensive than jet fuel, then no airline's going to jump up and down and get excited about it, because they might say, look at us, we're doing the right thing by the environment, but your ticket's going to be dearer, and people say, that's great, but I want to go with a cheaper airline, thanks. So sometimes that will be a driver. That was when aviation fuel wasn't quite as expensive as it is now. As the fuel has gone up and as SAF has not gone up, then it's getting closer and closer to that crossover point, and that will be exciting. But the biggest issue is we just don't have enough. And when we look at creating sustainable aviation fuel, we need more people eating fish and chips. But it's an interesting thing, because where are they getting the cooking oil from? It's still somewhere that they've got to get some sort of fossil fuel from for some of those, not for all of those things.
Well, quite often it's from cereal crops and whatnot. Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get it from that. So if you can get it from things that aren't fossil fuels at all, then that's fine. But just
we're not
quantity.
cooking in fossil fuels.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this stuff has grown, and the carbon is dragged out of the ground, from the air, I should say.
Yep.
And so that's part of the carbon cycle. We're just sort of cycling it through there,
back in there,
using it as fuel.
So you take that, and you just need a lot more because jets burn a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
Imagine someone going around to the fish and chip shops of the world saying, "Give us your cooking oil because we're going to be able to fly a jet for another 3 seconds on that little vat you've got there of cooking oil." So that is the biggest issue. They've done some work, but surely someone has said, before we go and do all this research, have we got enough of these various things to be able to create enough to be able to sustain aviation flight?
Well, I wonder if they just second a lot more farms to be creating the stuff to make the chip fat.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to have fish and chips in it at one stage. It's just the same oil as such. So at the moment, SAF currently accounts for less than 1% of global aviation fuel.
Yeah, okay.
It's an interesting experiment. But you've got some airlines now that are mixing it in, doing a bit of a shandy of some SAF and normal jet fuel. The great thing about SAF is you don't need to change your storage, don't need to change your engine, don't need to change how everything works. It all works with it. So if you talk about hydrogen or electric, you've got some major restructuring, some major processes to occur that are different. This is just about creating some SAF to then feed into those same structures. So it needs to get more volume, needs to get cheaper, but at least someone's looking at it because the aviation industry is still aiming for net zero by 2050, which is fairly ambitious when you've got something that burns a lot of fuel.
There's people thinking about it and they're working hard on it.
And they've given themselves 20-odd years to do it, so that's not a bad thing as well.
Since Edward Jenner's first experimental effort to protect young James Phipps from smallpox way back in 1796, now that's a pretty crude story if you ever haven't heard it, look that one up. Well, vaccines and immunology have come a very long way since then. In the 40s, Macfarlane Burnett worked out how to mass-produce vaccines from weakened or dead pathogens, and from then, the days where we feared polio, measles, smallpox, diphtheria, rubella, etc., these days were numbered. At last, we had a practical and functional defence, provided people took the jab, that is. The onset of COVID saw a major change in how vaccines were made, now using mRNA instead of attenuated pathogens, and a new era was born in immunology. Now 5 years on, and AI has put its stamp on everything. Matt, is it possible that AI might be able to design new vaccines for diseases or even strains of viruses, for example, that we haven't met yet?
Isn't that a fascinating concept? So it's typically reactive. The way I understand how a vaccine is created, as you said, you take a pathogen and then you say, let's create something that will understand what this looks like.
Yeah.
And it's all ready to fight. It's all done once we've got this thing here, this pathogen, that we know what it looks like. So it's always after the fact, as quick as possible after the fact, but after the fact. And we know things like coronavirus do change, they do mutate. As much as you've got a defence against it today, then next week, next year, the flu virus. We know that many people take the flu vaccine each year because it changes a bit each year. That's all reactive. But AI, using some AI, and this is saying, well, based on all this background information, all this previous data, and my understanding of how mutations work, then the next one will look like this. So let's design a vaccine that combats that before we've even seen that pathogen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yes.
So that means that you're not waiting for someone. You go and get it first, James. Once we know what it looks like in you, then I'll get the vaccine. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
But having AI, and again, it's just that data set of information, putting all that together to then start to predict the future. So I've tried with AI as an experiment to say, tell me who's going to win the footy tonight so I can put my house on the game, and it's told me that it won't give me any advice about gambling or predicting the future. But in this case, it really is predicting the future in a very sensible way, in a way that is absolutely critical to the future of mankind, because the next COVID-19 that comes along, COVID-19 did a lot of damage, could do a lot more damage of COVID-19.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of it depends how quickly we can come up with a vaccine, because we were in lockdown for a long time waiting for those vaccines to come out. They were done in record time.
That's right.
But it was still not fast enough for many people that died during COVID-19. So, wow, what a concept.
I just think, yeah. So we're trying to predict the small changes in proteins that form these antigens that our bodies then recognise. So the vaccine is just a way of training your body to be able to recognise a disease.
Before it's ever seen it, before it's actually been in your system, it's ready to go. It's got the defences in place before, and it comes along, I've got you covered, buddy. It's all over for you straight away. So
amazing.
I actually find that absolutely fascinating. So AI slop, creating 61-metre pools, or creating vaccines to save mankind. Can we just direct the AI to the vaccine stuff and not so much
AI just does everything.
It does
So you're going to get everything. You can't pick and choose.
Yeah, right. So I've got the slop with the vaccines. Okay.
And that is that for another episode, ladies and gentlemen. We're both about to be kicked out of the studio and brave the bleak weather of this Western New South Wales winter. And we've only got 1 or 2 minutes to rug up to avoid the frostbite. You're going to need it in particular to just protect your voice.
That's right. And I've got to go and watch some soccer and cheer things on. And I'm going to watch the linesmen really carefully to see if they've got that 10 centimetres under control.
Yeah, we're all going to be watching that.
So ask me again about the offside rule. I'll have it all under control next time we talk.
And thank you, good people, for tuning in to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson once again. Whether you're keeping warm, snuggled up in front of a virtual fireplace with a hot cup of cocoa, or kicking back on a banana lounge under an umbrella sipping pina coladas, this tidy little podcast makes for an excellent companion, albeit for 45 minutes or so. Call it the tourist's guide to the future. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you the very best for whatever lies ahead for you in the next 7 days. We hope that you've got plenty of conversation ammo for the lunchroom now. You're bound to impress those other Luddites around the photocopier and the water cooler. We'll be back with more stories next week, so join us again then. Take care, and we'll see you when we see you.